This module emphasises the importance of person-centred care, which is fundamental to the role of a PA. It highlights that each employer you support may have their own unique preferences, routines and needs, which should be respected and adhered to, so as to ensure that they can live life in a way that suits them. We're first going to look at some examples of specific preferences that some employers have. As you will hear, everyone is different when it comes to how they like things to be done. This is even more important due to the fact that these individuals need support from another person to complete these tasks, even if they would like to complete them independently. As a PA, it's crucial that you respect this.
So yeah, I think it would be really hard to say that I don't have specific preferences. I think that's something everyone has in their day-to-day life. So whether you are just an ordinary member of society and not disabled, you will do things in certain orders. And I think that rings true for me as a disabled person. So one of the things that I know is really, really specific to me, even not just disabled people, is that if we're going to lift my arm, I like it to be lifted by my wrist. So my PA will grasp my wrist and pull my arm up using my wrist. And that is because it puts less pressure actually on my wrist joint, but also allows my arm to move more freely. Whereas if you try and do it by the elbow, my shoulder kind of freezes up and makes it much harder to move. So that is one example of something that's quite specific.
I think what's really important is for me is like the minute details. So for instance, I don't know if I'm on my bed, like the tiniest crease, like on my bed or the tiniest crease in my clothing can make a massive like a difference to like my comfort. And just little things like having like minute changes in my position. Like I think for a PA, it's important that they see those tiny things as important and not an inconvenience. Because I've experienced people being frustrated and not understanding why that matters. So it's really important for a carer to understand that those little things actually make all the difference.
Michaela Hollywood and Ross Lannon share some examples of where their PAs have adapted to their specific preferences.
So it's really important for people to follow instruction so that I'm able to maintain that control and consistency within my care. So it might be that, if you're putting medication away, you put it in a certain order, or you're continuing to do a stock check every day, whatever those things are, or even putting something back where you found it. Might sound really mundane, but actually that can be really important to making sure that someone has continuity of care right throughout the day when you're here or when you're not here. And I think that's really important.
If I could give an example of some of my specific preferences, I think my PAs just know me now. For example, they know I'm not really much of a morning person, so they know that like we keep the chat to a bit of a minimum in the mornings. I like a slow start. I like a quieter morning. They respect that, whereas in the evenings, we'll talk as much as we like. We'll have a proper gossip, but in the mornings, we keep the chat to a minimum. And yeah, as well, like my PAs respect the fact that when I have friends over, for example, they know that I like my own time and my own space, and they respect my boundaries when I have friends. So yeah, if I've got some people round and I've got PAs in the house, they keep themselves, tucked out of the way. They'll pop in, they'll say hello, they'll be friendly, but they know that that's my space, that's my time with my friends, and they respect that. So yeah, those are some specific preferences I have.
So I suppose the most obvious example to this is most people, when they come in to work for me, if they have had previous experience in care, they're normally taught to dress by rolling. So by rolling to the left and then rolling to the right. And that's something that I'm actually not physically able to do. So I can only roll onto my right side. So the first adaptation everyone in my staff team has to make is in the way that I am dressed. So I am dressed in a way that has been assessed by my physiotherapist.
As a PA, it's important that you try to complete tasks in the way that your employer prefers. Ross Lannon and Tom Hardwick explain why.
I think it's the whole like quality of life thing, and I think to get like the best like quality of life, being able to be as in control as possible, like has like really massive impact, in particular like, on mental health. I think it like also it's about value as well. I feel like if people are enabling you to live the life that you want to lead, like it makes you feel more like valuable and confident as a person. I think for me, like if I don't have things done exactly the way I want them to be done, that can soon have a very negative effect on my own like mental well-being and sense of self.
I think ultimately it comes down to empowering us as an employer. You know, we ultimately want to live as independent a life as possible. So it's super important that they complete tasks the way that we want, because essentially it's still a workplace. They're still here to do a job. So they have to respect your desires, your wishes, your routine to a certain level that works for everyone. So yeah, there's definitely elements of compromise, but yeah, it's really important to respect that kind of independence, letting us maintain that control. You know, there's there's so many situations where people with disabilities often lack control over their lives and their bodies because of their disabilities. So when it comes to PA support, it's really important that they empower us as much as possible to be in control of certain aspects of our lives without a doubt, and just kind of maintaining that consistency, that routine. It's really important that they respect our dignity and our wishes. It's something I feel incredibly passionate about.
For individuals who need support in every aspect of their daily life, maintaining even a small degree of independence is crucial for their self-esteem, well-being, and sense of dignity. Even when extensive assistance is required, having control over simple everyday choices can significantly impact how empowered and in control they feel.
I think this is one of the most important questions, because we need to highlight the fact that the small choices to someone else are actually the big choices to us. You know, it's the little details and the little things that can have a long lasting impact on us.
When you're putting on your shoes and socks in the morning, you put them on your way, and nobody ever tells you you're doing it wrong. So you shouldn't tell a disabled person that you're going to do it your way.
I've been in lots of situations where PAs maybe questions something. Like, for example, I have my pillows in bed arranged differently every night. And some PAs have got a bit annoyed about it. And they're like, well, I thought you liked it like this. And sometimes just stopping and getting them to think, asking them, like, well, how often do you sleep in the same position? Like, could you tell me, like, what position you sleep in, or where you like to have your pillows? And then they kind of stop and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get where you're coming from. And not being afraid to like challenge them in moments like that. I think most people, if you explain things a very human position and you're just open and honest about your feelings, like most people will get it. Yeah, especially if you explain like how it makes you feel and why and what it's like to not have control, because I think you have to remember that most people haven't ever experienced complete lack of control over their body and over their personal care. But when they actually have that, when they're confronted with that idea, most people are quite willing to take that on board.
It's also important to mention the consequences of not following your employer's preferred methods.
I think the biggest danger in not following methods are really twofold. One is the failure of continuity of care, but the other is the failure of trust. And again, we talk a lot about the burden on carers to provide care, but there's also a lot of burden on the people being cared for, and a lot of that is built into trust. If you don't follow something even very simple, it can actually cause the disabled person to not want to do that activity or not want to ask you again to do that. And it's really important to understand that can have really significant mental health impact. And that is true whether you have a large care team or a small care team, but it is particularly pertinent for people who have really small care teams, where you maybe have only one or two people that you see. It might mean that for half the week you don't want to do a certain activity if you're unwilling to do it a certain way. So not trust can very quickly disintegrate.
Like if that continues to happen, then eventually that's going to like affect the relationship. A key way to like avoid that is clear communication. So if people are doing things in a way that you don't want them to be done, I think you need to get on top of that quickly.
Yeah, I think definitely like a very small annoyance can grow into a really big problem if you don't deal with it. I think also for us, our PAs doing things the way that we want them to do is about like us feeling safe and secure. For example, we are both dependent on ventilation overnight, and we rely on our PAs to check us. And if we don't feel confident that they're going to listen to the instructions we've given them and carry out things the way we've said, then we don't sleep as well, and we don't feel secure going to sleep at night.
We're now going to look at the ways in which you as a PA can actively respect your employer's preferences and how this can be communicated effectively between you and your employer.
The one that I thought was really interesting was writing it down. And I never thought of that before. But one of my PAs asked would I mind if they wrote it down. And I have no issue with that. Other people ask me repetitively. And I don't mind that either. I'm happy to answer over and over and over again. Other ways I've seen people do it are by referring to the handbook that they're given whenever they start work, by observing other PAs, asking other team members what they do, or it may even be as simple as labeling. Sometimes I will label a shelf so that people know what goes on that shelf. And so it can be everything and everything that really works for you and for the PA.
Ultimately, communication is key. You have to have that open dialogue, that two-way communication, communicate with each other what works, what doesn't work, but also be open to suggestions. I've been in scenarios with my PAs before where, we're mid-transfer and they're like, oh, can we just move this part here, or can we just do it this way? And actually their suggestion has actually enhanced the transfer, and it has actually made it easier for both of us. So it's about being open, having that communication. It's a really great way to kind of respect those preferences.
And I think communication really is the key to getting this right. Dealing with things early, but also very regular time aside to kind of feedback to each other. We do that kind of in the form of like supervision sessions where we like plan to sit down with our PAs and
Yeah.
talk about how we're finding it, how they're finding it, but in particular, it's a good time to actually bring up things because sometimes you don't want to, like, in the middle of, I don't know, somebody washing your hair,
Mm.
be like, oh, I don't like it when you wash my hair like that. And because,
Yeah.
it can feel uncomfortable, but actually, when you set aside time and you give them permission as well to say anything that's like bothering them, it's a good opportunity to be able to bring those little concerns and like put things right.
I think it's really important to get things right from the start. It's something that I have learned along the way is that sometimes if something happens that you're maybe not that keen on, if you don't speak up straight away, it's going to continue and ultimately that is going to become part of your routine. And if you don't want that to happen, it's important to kind of nip that in the bud early on and say, oh, actually, can we do it this way instead? This is what I would prefer. So I think that's really important. And also prioritizing your needs. I think that is a great way of communicating your preferences. Make sure that your PA knows what is your priority. So, for example, on days where I need a bit of extra support in the mornings, days that I have to head out for work, you've got certain time restraints. It's really important that your needs are prioritized so that they know I need to be out the door at this time. So we need to make sure, washing, dressing, all the household stuff, it needs to be ready and done so that I can be out the door at a specific time. So, yeah, be clear, be precise, share all the little details because the little details really do matter and that will really help you to effectively communicate with your PA.
I think what I would say to everyone who is becoming or thinking of becoming a PA to remember is that whenever someone says they need you to do it their way, what they're being is assertive and they're trying to make sure that things are set up for them so that their care is not impacted, their mental health is protected, and they can live their lives in a way that they pick. And I think that's really important. And it's a massive part of being able to have independence.
In this module, we've looked at why employers have specific preferences for how they like tasks to be done, and how it's important that PAs both respect and adhere to these. The potential consequences of not following an employer's specific preferences, and the importance and significance of good communication between employer and PA regarding preferences.